I Cry. My partner Micah Smith and I believe that the American Alliance of Museums should adopt a policy that requires free admission to all art museums. Free admission would allow opportunities for more exposure of the public to the art and culture that the museums provide. This would allow people to create a deeper appreciation for art and have a positive influence on the culture. Some definitions to understand the resolution better are American Alliance of Museums, and it is a non-profit organization that brings together all the museums in the United States, art, history, children's, science museums. The AAM provides public support for issues that involve the entire museum community. Art Museum is a museum devoted to the exhibition of works of art. Some harms I see from having admission fees at art museums is that the art museums are not available to all the public or community. In Raymark Rinaldi's article written in the Denver Post in 2015, Raymark Rinaldi, Denver Post, 2015, he says, "It's not that people don't want museums. Attendance is as high as ever. It's that they want museums that they don't have to pay for." Not everyone is able to pay for the admission fees to get in and to get that culture and that experience of being there. Another harm I see is people are not inspired to visit art museums at the current cost. Another spot in Raymark Rinaldi's article, he says, "Charging anything puts up a barrier between the art and the people. You don't have to pay for things you already own. You do have to pay for things somebody else owns." And it's not necessarily that the community owns the art museums or the art, but having that barrier of an admission fee makes the people feel like they're not as welcome, that it's not there for them to experience and enjoy. A solution to this problem is having free admission at all art museums. All art museums will be expected to admit attendees at no charge. Should a museum continue to require admission, that museum will lose its accreditation from the AAM, and be given a fine of $10,000. The revenue from the fines will be used to fund other museums that have no entrance fee, and other museums will also be funded by the AAM and certain taxes such as luxury taxes and entertainment taxes. The American Alliance of Museums will enforce this policy along with the assistance of the United States government. Some advantages I see from having free admission at all art museums is that it can be an economic constructive outlet for the general public. In Roberta Smith's article, written in the New York Times in 2006, Roberta Smith, New York Times, 2006, she says that museums can put us in touch with the art and its history, with the world and its history. They reveal to us our own feelings, shaping our idea of what we can become. They give us the visual equivalent of things sorely needed today, an understanding of difference and therefore of tolerance. People can go to art museums and be with a community, become more close-knit, and they can learn about their culture, their past, and learn so many things from being at a museum. Another advantage is it could increase frequency and number of art museum attendees. Another place in Roberta Smith's article, she says, Doreen Bolger, the director of the Baltimore Museum, told the Washington Post that the number of non-white visitors nearly tripled during the museum's free hours. Nearly tripled during the free hours. Museums that give free admission days have many more people from different socioeconomic backgrounds come and experience the art for themselves, because that is when they can't pay for it otherwise. The last advantage I see is a greater appreciation for the arts. In Raymark Rinaldi's article, he says cities that make their museums free create a casual atmosphere. As price goes down, passion goes up, and there's some evidence of this in St. Louis and Kansas City. St. Louis and Kansas City museums are museums that have done the pledge of having free admission, and many more people are coming and having passion for the art museums. My partner and I believe that free admission to all art museums would be very beneficial to the public. Free art museums would allow a strong connection between the community and the people. Thank you for your time. I'm now ready for cross-examination.
And just as a reminder, you have 1 minute for cross-examination.
So may I have a copy of your 1A seat?
Yes, ma'am.
And I know this is a weird podium, but if you can stand like shoulder to shoulder, that'll be more like a real podium.
Did you know that we fund the governments through our tax dollars?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know that through government funding, they raise our taxes. And is Ray Ronaldo credible?
Yes, he is. He is an fine arts critic, and he is a journalist covering classical music, visual art, opera, dance, and more.
And who did you include in the general public?
Everyone.
Just were you focusing on a general group, or was it just anybody who's having enough or having the time for free museums?
Anybody who has time.
Alright, and that's time. And if you guys look over here, I can try and give you time signals. Like, if you have a minute left, you have 10 seconds left. And with the negative, like, to use any left time?
Yes.
Yes. Alright, I will tell you in 30 seconds that is used. And time up.
Is the judge ready? Time's ready. Alright. Good afternoon, everybody. My partner, Kraus, and I, Christopher Solano, stand firmly resolved that the AAM should not adopt a nationwide policy requiring free admission into all art museums. We accept the affirmative's definitions, and we find many problems with their plan. Harm 1, the problem is insignificant. The problem is insignificant. According to the IMLS, which is the Institute of Museum and Library Services, there are only 35,000 museums in the United States, but only 4.5% of those are art museums. This number boils down to about 1,400 art museums in the United States. A total of about 323.1 million people live in the U.S. according to www.statista.com. Only 10% of the population visits art museums in the U.S. a year, and only 32 million people visit 1,400 art museums, not including how many are not involved in the American Alliance of Museums. According to a graph done by AAMD.org, the Association of Art Museum Directors, historical societies, preservations, sites, and houses take up the majority of 48% of the museums in the United States. 48%. Art museums are the fourth largest number on that graph. We should not even be discussing why art museums shouldn't be free. There are bigger fish to fry, such as historical museums, historical sites, houses, and societies. What the affirmative has proposed is so minute in the grand scheme of things. Harm 2. Employees will experience added stress. If this policy were to pass, what happens to the employees? Will they take a pay cut? They will have to. According to the AAMD.org, a total of 7% of their average income comes from admission fees. 7%. This number is so minuscule that admission fees is the least of our worries. And a total of 16% of their average operating expenses goes to their administration and IT. Employees will suffer along with their families, whom they are not able to support properly anymore. Harm 3. Funding. Who is going to fund this policy? The affirmative said that they shall use the AAM, fines, shops within the museums, and other taxes. But the AAMD.org said that only 8% of their funding comes from the museum stores. And we argue that the fine is too excessive. We suggest instead of a $5,000 fee. The government only funds 6% of the museum's average income. Who is going to make up for the missing 7%? Is the government going to come up with the other 7% and increase inflation on our US dollar? The outcome of this scenario is grim. To come up with that other 7%, if inflation rises, prices rise. For those who cannot support their families anymore, let's say those art museum employees who have taken a pay cut, what happens to them? Do you condemn them to live in poverty? The value of the US dollar decreases by 7% with this funding program. As we have stated earlier, my partner, Kraus, and I, Christopher Solano, stand firmly resolved that the AAM should not adopt a nationwide policy requiring free admission to all art museums for these reasons. The problem is insignificant. Employees will experience added stress and the funding. Thank you. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
Alright, and I'll give you, this is 30 seconds. Just so
How many art museums are free versus those who charge admission? Do you know the number or percentage?
I don't think I do, no.
What percentage of income are the admissions?
7%.
7%. So if it's only 7%, then what makes it so difficult to make all museums? How much difference is that affecting their income?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes. If it's only 7% of their income, then why would that be causing such a problem to take that income away?
It's who's gonna come up with the other 7% is what I was trying to say. You lose 7% and how are you gonna make that up?
And that's 10. Alright, with the affirmative.
I would like a minute to do this.
I'll let you know.
I'm ready. Is the judge ready? Is the timekeeper. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Micah Smith, and my partner and I, Frey, stand firmly resolved that the American Alliance Museums should enforce a nationwide policy to require free art museums. First of all, I would like to point out that funding is not an issue with our plan. I have an article authored by Ford W. Bell saying U.S. museums invest more than $2 billion in educational programs. Our plan would be to cut back on this investment as to serve as compensation for our cut in wages for our employees. Quoted by Ford W. Bell, the third operating revenue segment is commonly referred to as earned revenue. This is defined as those revenues resulting directly from museum exhibitions, programs, retail sales, or rentals. Admission fees are included in this category, although such fees account for a very small percentage of museum revenue, generally around 5%. So first of all, I would like to point out that 5% is not a lot of revenue to make up for, should we enforce free art museums globally. Next up, I would like to point out another growth area in this revenue stream of which is rentals. Often U.S. museums boast the impressive structures in town, inside and out. Museums have been able to capitalize on this important asset, renting out space for corporate gatherings, ceremonial occasions, and even weddings. The average U.S. museum draws 27% of its revenue from earned income, okay, which is included in these rentals, which are not considered admission fees. Next up, I would like to give an example of free admission working today in this world. Of course, the Smithsonian's Washington Art Museums and the National Gallery of Art are free. They are supported almost entirely by taxpayers' dollars, which makes it hard to deny that the public owns them. First of all, we would like to expand upon our plan and emphasize that we would not be requiring a higher tax rate, only cutting back on unnecessary funding, such as abortion. Thank you, that is all I have to say. I'm ready for cross-examination.
afternoon. How are you?
Sweaty and hot.
Okay, so in your plan that we shall cut back on, you said that you're going to cut back on educational funding. Is this true?
Yes, it is.
How much did you plan on cutting back?
We will establish that upon the acceptance of our plan.
Okay. And in your speech, you said that you shall enforce museums to have free admission globally. I thought, didn't our resolution specifically specify the U.S.?
Yes, my apologies.
All right, thank you. And you mentioned somebody in your speech with the last name of Bell. May you please state his name?
Ford W. Bell.
Ford W. Bell.
Ford W. Bell.
Is he a credible source?
Yes, he is an author for the Embassy of the United States of America and authored this article.
And where did you get your rental Oh, sorry.
Yep, sorry, that's time.
I have no more questions.
Right, and the negative is not having me this term.
Negative does not continue. Were you ready?
Judge ready? Clock ready? Observation 1. Museums are easily affordable. The price for most museums is not overly expensive. The Indianapolis Museum of Art instituted an $18 fee. At the Dallas Museum of Art, it is $16 for a special exhibit, and the Cincinnati Art Museum has special exhibits for $10. The average American spends $140 a day, so all of these costs are not easily affordable, or are easily affordable by most people. Also, not everybody goes into a museum every day. The fact that art museums should be free would not change much. $10 to $18 is not a massive amount of money. Even those who are in poverty can afford a museum ticket. Working for 3 hours at minimum wage can buy a ticket to the Indianapolis Museum of Art. My observation 2, people stress over donations and grants. If art museums became free, then fundraisers and grants must be found for buildings to continue to remain open. The AMM website has a page which asks for help to earn money for their museums. Finding grants and creating fundraisers can take days of stress to create. Federal grants can take 3 to 6 months to obtain, which puts added stress on those who manage the free museums. If you make museums free, then you take a small burden from the public and place a large one on the shoulders of the museum owners and managers. It's a bit like when someone puts another plate in the sink while you're washing dishes. It makes your job hard to do. Other evidence. Another reason art museums should not be free is the content of the art. There is art that contains nudity and other actions that a child should not see. If free admission were allowed, what would the children be able to see? Do we want a child to see this? We created an acronym for bad art. It is abominable, R-rated, and trash. It is abominable because not all art is glorifying to God. It is R-rated because it contains nudity and the like, which children shouldn't be permitted to see. And it is trash because some art looks like junk that was just thrown together. Keep in mind that not all art is included in this acronym. We need to keep in mind the things that we allow our children to see. Thank you, that's all I have.
Alright, before you have 2 minutes and 10 seconds if you have time remaining.
Who's I'm cross-examining.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm giving you some track. Cross-examination. Sorry. And just because I know I was losing track, we have cross-examination and then the first negative rebuttal. Okay, great.
Good afternoon. So, first of all, I would like to ask, do you have any evidence for junky personal, for junky and low quality art?
I do not at the moment have this.
Interesting. And then what is your evidence for your R-rated, however you said it, artwork?
There's been the R-rated is because there's been nudity and just other sexual acts which
Do you have any-
child must not see. There's been Michelangelo. He's done several works of art that contain these things that are displayed in museums.
Do you believe that the children are not already seeing this artwork?
I do not know.
Would nothing change?
I would say it would change because that the children would not be able to see these things if they were if they were blocked out.
Okay, thank you.
And is there prep time for this, or?
You have technically used all your prep time.
Okay. Is the judge ready? Thank you, Bree. As I have stated earlier, the problem with funding this plan is that if the government decides to fund this plan, then we are raising taxes so we can all have free admission into art museums. And according to the AAMD, the affirmative earlier stated that 21% of their income comes from facility rentals. But according to the AAMD, the Association of Art Museum Directors, only 1% on average comes from the facility rentals. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Alright, now we'll be affirmative on please. You have 2 minutes and 10
Give me
seconds.
prep time.
The negative team said that only 10% of people visit art museums, but that number I believe is so low because it is expensive. And even if it's only 10%, those 10% of people would be able to be educated about their history and their culture and so many different things from the art, even if it is only 10%. The negative team also said that admission fees are not that much, but according to the New York City Art Museum, adults are the most expensive for $25. And if you are not well off in money to begin with, $25 is quite a bit to be spending just to educate yourself when there's so many different options to do this. The negative team also said that 7% of the museum's income are admissions. And if it's only 7%, then how much would it be taking away from the museum's income? We have sufficient funds, such as the unnecessary taxes, like luxury taxes and entertainment taxes, and we figured that many museums will not like having to take away some of their income, and so they will refuse to do the policy, resulting in a fine, which we can also fund other museums who are not doing the admission fee, so it would make up for it. And that is all I have.
Judge Ready? Thank you. So, would it be more valuable to spend your money and time? You spend your money and time to learn. We all spend money in what we do to be educated, but our paying increases the value of the art as well. It allows us to just value it more and just be able to appreciate the works of those done before us. If you continue to
Let's go back over your reasons.
Okay. Like I said before, most tickets are not overly expensive. the affirmative did list one that was $25, but 10 to 18 is 3 different museums. Most museums have cheaper prices for those things and are not usually overly expensive. Like I said before, there's working for 3 hours at just minimum wage can buy you a ticket for Indianapolis Museum of Art, which is $18. We must consider that most museums are usually under $10, art museums. That's all I have.
Alright,
I'll have a little bit of time. Okay, I'm ready. Okay. The judge ready? Is the timekeeper ready? First of all, I would like to address the junk art personal preference. Much modern art is regarded as artwork in and of itself. Many people simply do not appreciate it. Second of all, we have proved that our funding will be effective, given the fact that we will be cutting down on unnecessary spending, such as abortion, and we will be cutting down on the amount of spending that the museum itself presents. I have a source, I know it. So museums spend on average $2 billion in education alone. If we cut down that amount of money every single year and did not spend that amount of money, funding will be much less of a problem. Aside from the fact that we will be able to capitalize on renting out for events and things of the sort. And the negative team previously, like I said, announced a tax increase to help fund these museums. That would not be the case for the previously mentioned reasons. I would also like to bring up the topic that they argue that that this resolution is not significant. I would like to explain the importance of art and how, if we were to allow free admission, it would allow for more appreciation. This is a source authored by Raymar Rinaldi of the Denver Post. Quote, cities that make their museums free create a casual atmosphere that invites everyone in all of the time. In free cities, people pop in at lunch or stop in for 15 minutes every Thursday to take in one painting at a time. Free museums are places where friends meet and homeowners take guests to show off what their community has built and can access without permission. The argument that payment increases the value of the art that is being presented, we believe is false, because when you make the admission free, you are allowing for more accessibility, which can allow for more appreciation across a much broader scale. And then, okay. And another argument that I would like to mention is people working minimum wage have many more things to worry about than going to an art museum. 3 hours working minimum wage is putting food on the table. It is not taking you to an art museum. And then the argument that art museum admission, the argument that museum admission is inexpensive is quite arguable, because a movie ticket is much more inexpensive than museum admission. Thank you, that's all I have to say.
You guys probably don't need to sit down because you're just gonna come sit back down over here. Alright, so we decided that the affirmative team won today's round. Both teams did an excellent job.